I'd like to welcome you all and introduce you to our next speaker. Dave Cutting is a reader in computer science at Queen's University Belfast, and he says that he bores young minds of tomorrow to tears on a number of subjects. I trust that's not right. David has over 20 years of experience in ICT roles, ranging from frontline help desk to development and management. In addition to his day job, Dave does a range of consultancy roles and is involved in some small businesses. A fellow of the British Computer Society and a senior fellow of Advanced HE, Dave holds a PhD in software engineering and a master's in advanced computer science. Dave was awarded a national teaching fellowship last year. With that, Dave, I'll welcome you to the stage. You can explain what you're speaking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You get introduced, you almost sound quite impressive, don't you, until you stand up in front of everyone. So I'll now repeat everything that was said in my first slide. So thank you so much for coming along to talk. I hope you're having a great day today. If I run off coughing, I apologise. I was something horrible in my chest for 2 weeks. We'll try and get through this together. So yeah, I'm Dave. I'm Dave Cutting. I know a few of you here have been unfortunate enough to be taught by me or been involved in projects with me, and my day job, I work at Queen's University, really focused on kind of education, but I have a lot of research into software engineering. And over the years, and this is my usual moan, I used to be technical, and now I seem to get pushed towards people, process, all the stuff around it. And AI, I don't know if you've heard of it, right? It's a bit of a topic at the moment. Last year, I gave a talk where I was like, I am not mentioning AI. In the last 12 months, I've changed my view. In the last 12 weeks, I've changed my view. So here we are. Welcome to my stream of consciousness and what it means. Before I get started properly, just a quick call out. Queen's is very, very open, as is Ulster and Open University, other places, for you to collaborate with us. I know there's employers in the audience, things like that. If you're interested in providing placements to our students, internships or jobs, please do get in touch. We'd love to sort of push that out. And a call out for me at the moment, we're now recruiting for funded PhDs, start in October 26. I've got 2 projects live which have the potential for funding. One is around augmenting engineers, not replacing engineers with AI. The other one is about how do we best do requirements engineering in an AI era. And hopefully when we finish those projects, we might have a few answers to what goes on. So that's the end of the kind of corporate nonsense from me, and I am now required to give you this disclaimer that nothing that I say after this represents the view of my employer or anybody else, right? It is poorly thought out, and as I say, it's my view and my view am alone. So, the elephant in the room, AI. Once I'd worked out they didn't mean artificial insemination, and I wasn't sure quite how that related to software, artificial intelligence, and much of the world at the moment is sort of polarized one way or the other, and I'm increasingly finding that AI is also. So on the one hand, we have AI equals A, the wonderful best opportunity in the world. Give us all your money. We will live in a utopian future. It'll be Star Trek, but better, right? You'll be able to just sit being looked after. It's a land of rainbows and unicorns and flooding through fields and all of this kind of stuff. Don't worry about the environmental impact. Don't worry about the impact on people. We'll ignore it. And on the other hand, option B seems to be we are absolutely doomed. We, as developers, are doomed. Why am I going to pay you to do a job that a robot can do? And increasingly, people are coming on going, well, no, it will achieve sentience and wipe us out, obviously, right? Because the first thing any sentient computer would do is launch the missiles. It's trained on Terminator as a way of going through. And AI has kind of been so much in the news, and it's been one or the other. Everything is fine, or it's going to kill jobs, it's going to widen wealth inequality. Is it going to go? What's going on? And what is our actual, experience of it? And this is the question that I think about, right? Is it the panacea to the future, or is it absolute doom? Okay. I tend to think in the same way in which when I was young and idealistic and my hair was higher up my body, I was certain about things, right? I was like idealistic and whatever, and all that's happened over the years is a slide to grey and uncertainty, okay? So I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, okay? These tools are exciting, they're interesting. I'm really hoping that they're not literally going to replace us. And I think one of the things that if I was talking about this 5-6 years ago, would you embrace tools that would do your development for you, do the scut work, right? Create database schemas for you, do the stuff that you've done 1,000 times and you can do by rote. I've been really positive about it. I'd say absolutely, because it frees me up to do the blue skies intellectual stuff. When it came along, I found myself having a reactionary, old white man fear reaction to it, okay? Like, this is terrible. Like, what do you mean I can't do my job? And I also suddenly realized that for many years, how I had defined myself was I'm a programmer, right? And that's the coolest job you can have nowadays, okay? You're at the code face, okay? This is the modern person going out and building things with these hands. And also it's a skill that most people, not in this room, but most people in the wider world don't really understand. So what that means is I'm a programmer. They're like, wow, you must be cool or something like that. And suddenly this thing can do my job for me, potentially, parts of it, and that is in large part the fear. So I've been trying to reflect back and thinking about where did this all come from, right? And if we look at computers, the history of computers, we start with single-purpose computational machines, the abacus, the slide rule, the punch card. I love this photo, by the way, I include it in every presentation I possibly can. We're starting to program things, and then we get to World War II, Colossus, the first digital computer, ENIAC, the first general-purpose digital computer. And what general-purpose computers brought to us is the thing that brings us all together, which is software. Okay, and programming languages are one of the great loves of my life, and sort of telling these obscure machines that don't themselves make errors, but I can program it in such a way that it absolutely will go wrong, becomes the kind of thesis of my life. And computer software has been problematic as long as there has been computer software. So 1946, the first computers came in. Skip forward by 1968, the world is on fire. There's revolution in the streets. The Vietnam War is going on, various things, and this is what computing looked like. And the biggest users of computers were the state. Okay, so NATO, big banks, these kind of things were invested, and NATO especially was spending all this money to try and standardize things. And if anyone's ever heard of this, there was a thing called the software crisis. And in 1968, there was a conference about it. And what was discovered was the vast majority of software projects were failing. All this money was being spent, all this time was being put in, and yet most things delivered no appreciable benefit. If anything, things got worse. And nobody really understood why that was. So a study was done by these two people, and they amazingly found that successful projects were ones in which the developers actually looked at the requirements. Now, that must have been some really clever 60s thinking, okay, is that who knew? Now, it's slightly more nuanced, because it doesn't just mean that they looked at the requirements, but it meant they understood the requirements. And one of the things that a thesis that I've presented many times to many people who listen is, we can say the same words but understand different things. So a business manager will say something and they have in their head a picture of what they mean. A technical developer will receive that information and they process it and work out what they think they mean, and it turns out the two are totally different. So requirements from the early days of software becomes clear. So we skip forward 20 years, 1986. This guy's in the White House. Chernobyl has set the scene for a great TV miniseries, which will come later on. Challenger has set the scene for several great TV miniseries that will come later on. For the first time ever, Colonel Gaddafi and Princess Diana share the front cover of a magazine. That's an interesting Venn diagram of intersection. And of course, the greatest film of all time comes out. Who would like to tell me what that is? Yes, correct. Top Gun. If anyone answered otherwise, I just walk out at this point, okay? So the greatest film of all time comes out, Top Gun. And at the same time, this guy's working away. So Fred Brooks, really interesting person. If you haven't looked it up, I'd recommend it. He wrote a book called, or a thesis called The Mythical Man Month, about his work at IBM, that this fallacy that you put more people on a project, it would lower the time, it makes it bigger. And he publishes a paper called No Silver Bullet. And in it, 1986, personal computer revolution, computers are now everywhere. We're riding the wave, pre-internet wave of computer adoption. He basically says software's awful. Software's a werewolf. It can turn at any time and it'll bite you. And it's fundamentally flawed. Its essence, it's complicated, subject to external conformity, it's changeable, it's invisible. It's the most complicated piece of engineering that we've ever done. So by 1986, software products had many orders of magnitude more configurability than the Saturn V moon rocket. And he puts that makes it incredibly difficult and impossible. But he identifies some hopes for the silver bullet that will kill the werewolf. And one of those hopes in 1986 was automatic programming. And of course, automatic programming in 1986 seemed like a great idea. Also in 1986, Donald Knuth was working on the web language, pre the web that Berners-Lee invented, WB capitalized, which was a merge of text, which if you've ever used that is a document typesetting language, natural language and requirements, the idea being that I can write and express in a human understandable form things that then turn into code. When I used to talk about Fred Brooks, Donald Knuth a few years ago before AI, I was like, automatic programming, wouldn't that be great? But as I've mentioned, when it becomes a bit of a reality, I suddenly find my heart beating and I'm like, well, I didn't mean now, I didn't mean before I can get paid to do all the code. So we're in an area at the moment where for many, many years we have had the understanding natural language is the dream. If we can express it, why are we converting it from the business person's natural language into our understanding, into technical requirements, into written code? And also, many people would argue if your requirements are written well enough and clearly enough, they map directly to code anyway, okay? So we find ourselves in this situation. And so I was thinking back, and again, I thought, right, have we had any times where something has happened and we've democratized, we've made easy access to technical solutions, and this has been held up as the great panacea and the great hope and everything's fine and we're going to do everything together? And I suddenly realized that a few years ago there was this nightmare of low code, no code. Now, whoever it is invented that, and whoever it is wrote Microsoft Dynamics needs to burn horribly in hell, because it's still going on, right? And it's Microsoft Access on the web. It's awful. It's technical debt in a can, okay? It's why don't you pay us, put all your intellectual property in us, and then we will charge you in perpetuity. It's just the most ridiculous thing. But what it did is it did a couple of things. Firstly, it allowed business people to go, we don't need developers anymore because we have these, low-code, no-code solutions. And LinkedIn posts of people saying anyone who doesn't use Power Dynamics BI is going to be out, right? It makes no sense, okay? And the second thing was that it democratized access to systems. You suddenly had people who couldn't really code, couldn't really build systems, didn't understand the technical complexity, but they could publish a live system with logic in. And understandably, they were awful and it all went wrong. And I thought, has that happened before? And I thought, yes. And I'm going to show you a logo now that will cause upset to some people and joy in others. So PHP. PHP 3 was amazingly easy to use. It allowed people who really shouldn't to write websites and publish them. It had super globals in, it had wonderful features, it had terrible security constructs. It was incredibly easy to host it for the first time ever because you literally FTP'd up, right? It was software, didn't need to compile it, and there was your website, and 10 minutes later it was hacked, and then, and it was fine. And I was really grateful for this because I spent many years earning quite a lot of money fixing a lot of mistakes people had made with all of these things. So it has happened before, and we've kind of been through this. So we worry about the democratization of SE, and if anyone like me is following these vibe coding exercises on Facebook where people are now able to have code generated that they have no idea about, in Visual Studio Code, which will publish it for them through a tunneled link to give them a public URL to a live web service that's running on their laptop in their bedroom. I mean, they think that's a great idea. I rub my hands with glee and think I look forward to charging you to pick up the pieces afterwards, right? Okay, so pros and cons, swings and roundabouts. And the other thing is that AI, and I mean this is changing all the time, is that it's also often not very good. So you ask ChatGPT how to wire a plug and it generates this. This has great surface validity. You scan it and you think, yeah, it's fine. I don't know if anyone here is an electrical engineer. I know a couple of people are that are sitting down the front row, but even I'm like, okay, we're wiring the earth to the fuse, to the live. It's good. My mate Neil Anderson generated this and said, use this as an example. And then he said to it, well, how do you not wire a plug? And it was like, I know, like that. So surface validity is there, but it's not necessarily very good. And then the other thing is this idea about low friction, that it will agree with you. It's brilliant. I love it. Dave, you're a genius, right? What a great question. What a great way of thinking, right? But it's not necessarily any good at it. And I think, and you don't want to over-anthropomorphize this, but it is a teenage developer. And what I mean by that is, as I said earlier, I've never been more certain about things than when I was 14, 15. I never had more time to read up. I was really good at reading docs, but I had no common sense. I asked one of the many, many code tools to generate me a stateful database that saved some stuff. It generated what looked really good. I said, well, where are the database credentials? And it said, oh, no, I'm using in-memory stores. It had met the requirement, but it hadn't done it. These are junior developers who are better than us at reading docs. Okay, they actually read them, they understand them, but they do not have any contextual awareness. And this, I think, is where our opportunity comes in, because we are presented with these brilliant AIs where we're told this is amazing, okay? And when OpenAI benchmark their own product against software engineering tasks that they have chosen, it's brilliant. When you ask it to make a login form in Tailwind, it is brilliant. When you give it some awful abomination that you've been maintaining for 5 years and say, analyze this code base, please help, not a hope. So we need to ask ourselves then, how can we be clever when we are working with stupid? And the key is thinking about people. I'm sure some of you here, not all of you, have had colleagues who are very useless. And I think it's me, because I don't, but the way we deal with that is we become clearer with them. We become more precise. We get better at micromanaging, okay? And micromanaging, people say, oh, it's a bad phrase. I'll introduce you to some people you need to micromanage in order to ensure, because these bots or these people, whatever, they are not very smart. And now prepare yourself for this next slide, because it is pretty amazing. So the key, it comes back to, having spoken about this stuff for years, is requirements. I reused this slide from last year. It's an amazing piece of PowerPoint animation. I just want to take a moment to, I know, right? The key is requirements, because it's always requirements, except when it's DNS, right? So it's always one of the two, but let's not, and often it's the requirement of DNS to work that fails, okay? So it's always requirements. It's always DNS. And what I believe is that you can use AI and you can 10x your development practice. I also believe you can use AI and 0.2x your development practice. And the trick is going to be us adding the human value to it. I can genuinely see in a few years the idea of artisanal code, right? Is that this code was written by people in a basement in Shoreditch, and look at their beanie hats they were wearing, and and look at the errors they've created. But it's about identifying where it's value to you and where it's not, and these kind of things. And so what I think is you need to now think about the meta requirements, right? So the other thing that goes around is, and I've seen this everywhere, is people are like, oh, here is the 10x key to ChatGPT, the master prompt. And it's always something like this. You are an amazing and a highly experienced developer who revels in documentation, extensive testing, and coding standards. You cannot find peace until your code is so correct and beautiful that Donald Knuth cries with joy. Do not make mistakes. And I was trying this as a prompt, but the problem is that GPT genuinely believes it's an amazing, highly experienced developer, and it's not. And I saw someone offer this, and this is what I've been using, and this I find genuinely, this is the one thing that you may take away from this is actually helpful. You're a nervous new developer. You want to keep your job and not make mistakes. You ask questions if anything's unclear and are never afraid to ask for more clarification or point out mistakes. You know everyone can make mistakes, so you take time to check things, commit regularly to error, and never push to production. That change and going through that dialogue is exactly what I do with new junior staff who I work with. You need to ask me. I'm going to explain something to you, and if anything's unclear, I need you to ask me for clarification. I'm going to explain it to you, and I want you to explain back to me what you think I've given you as a task. It's the requirements, or DNS, but usually the requirements. So, the question I posed when I submitted this talk ages ago, and I thought I'll have an answer by now, is are we doomed, or are we just evolving? I don't have an answer. If we're doomed, then it's too late. Okay, I kind of think, if Skynet's going to rise up and launch the missiles, well then what the hell? Okay, let's have a good time. If in 5 years' time my job doesn't exist, oh dear, okay? And there are people out there that say, well, we should all retrain as bricklayers, but then if no one's paying the bricklayers, so it's difficult. This is obviously a seismic shift. It's obviously probably the biggest change that we have ever seen in development. I think it's bigger than object-oriented programming, but it is just another change in a field in which, even before AI, if I'd said to you, the only constant is there is no constant, you'd have all nodded sagely and then realized that the language had evolved 5 more times. The trick is going to be how we choose to use it. The trick is going to be if we can find ways to go ourselves. And the other thing is going to be that and you may well disagree, and I welcome any comments in a minute, I think we're due a bubble burst. I think there's a lot of companies out there that are making these amazing promises, and AI has the surface validity. It looks great. Long term, yeah, sure, but at the moment, it can generate greenfield projects like it's going out of fashion, but it doesn't have the context, it doesn't have the understanding, and what it can't do is that kind of higher value lateral thinking, which is what we do. So I think we still have a job for a while to come, all right? And I would hope that you agree, or I'll see you down the job market in a few years' time. And thank you very much for your time. I'm on time. If anyone has any... If anyone has any questions, I won't have an answer. If anyone has any thoughts, we're welcome to hear them. Anyone has any disagree? Yeah.
You talk about the bubble burst thing. So you thinking about that in the same way that .com event and sort of called
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. If anyone didn't hear it, when I'm talking about the bubble burst, is it the .com thing? I think it's absolutely the .com thing. I think that it's going to help because actually it can be extreme Darwinism. So you have companies, OpenAI is losing a lot of money. The figure I saw was that 75% of its expense is on users that pay nothing, okay? But OpenAI has deep pockets, it's a leader, it's all of that kind of stuff. There are a myriad of other AI companies out there that I can sign up to today that give me loads of free credit, but it's not their AI. They are using GPT-5 on OpenAI. So what they've done is borrowed $200 million worth of venture capital to let me write code using their API keys, and I will, thank you very much. And I don't know if anyone's used Factory AI. Factory AI I've been using for months. And then it sent me a lovely email saying, we hope you've enjoyed it. Your free trial has come to an end. Would you like to provide us billing details? And I was like, delete, move on. So I absolutely think there are companies out there that at the minute, exactly like .com, in the Silicon Valley, if you watch that, they are pre-revenue, right? They'll go, our potential is huge because we have 100 million active users, but the minute that needs to translate into, oh God, we need to pay for something, I think we'll see a lot of them disappear, yeah. Oh, yes? Well, we work in universities, so we never change what we teach. Let me just say again, these are my views, not the views of my employer. Look, we're really slow to change. My view is... Sorry? Absolutely. Do you know what, though? If you're a COBOL developer nowadays, do you know what AI doesn't do? COBOL. Okay. So in my own personal practice, as of this year, I've involved AI in my teaching. And I'm not just saying, as in, you can use it, you mustn't use it. I'm running a course in January, that I've taken over that used to be design patterns, traditional stuff. I'm throwing all of that out, because I still think there's a place to understand that, but I think memorizing 38 patterns is not what it's there for. I'm going to ask them to critique AI's generation of code. So what I would love is that we can put things in, how do you become a critical user and how do you use it to its best? Education has just knee-jerked to say, no, we're going to have exams with quills and it's going to be great. I personally, my views are my own, do not think that's the way to go. All right, a stunned silence. Everyone's very positive about AI, and it's totally fine. All right, well, guys, look, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming along to the talk. All right, take care.